Hello, everyone, and welcome to COVID-19 Beyond the Biology. When it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic, this really highlights for us before, in a way that it never has before, the importance of public health and its relevance when it comes to our work. At the College of Public Health, we understand that health really is more than just a disease, and it's also going to involve your environment, your state of mind, and your behaviors. In this particular webinar, we're going to be speaking to physical activity as one of those behaviors. My name is Sara Kovacs, and I am very happy to be joined here by Dr. Jack Sears. We are both from the Department of Kinesiology, and we are really excited to invite you as well as your family to talk with us today about staying home and staying active. Today in our webinar, we're really going to aim to address the three objectives that you see here. We want to talk about activities that can be done at home. We have some really great examples that you could complete while you're working from home, while you and your family are watching TV, maybe while you're trying to think of other ways that you can move despite being unable to go to the gym or your normal fitness setting. We're also going to talk about activities that can be done outdoors, and Jack has some really wonderful recommendations about how to safely be active outdoors. And lastly, we want to set everyone up for success and establish a time of day to be physically active, as well as a physical activity plan. So what we want you to take a moment to do is to really think about, what does being physically active mean to you? Being physically active means something a little bit different to everyone. But here's what I'm going to ask you. When it comes to physical activity, do you need equipment? Do you need equipment to be physically active? Some people say yes, some people say no. By the end of today's discussion, my hope is that everyone says, no, I could be physically active right here from my desk during my workday or while spending time with my family. Can you be physically active from home? I think I already gave this one away. The answer is absolutely yes. And we're going to talk about different ways that that's possible today. And lastly, can physical activity be enjoyable? I'm hoping that everyone says absolutely. And even if you're unsure of how could physical activity really be enjoyable, that's something that Jack and I are looking forward to talking with you about today. There's many ways to be active. We want to talk to you about physical activity and how to add physical activity into your day, because there are many myths and misconceptions out there when it comes to physical activity. The first is that if I'm active, I'm going to be tired. Actually, there's evidence out there that shows us that individuals perceive having more energy when they're active. So we're going to speak to some of that today. No pain, no gain is not true. If you're not sweating, you're not working hard enough. Jack and I are both going to speak to the importance of movement throughout your day, and those movements do not have to be running. You don't have to be sweating to be physically active. You do not need 30 continuous minutes each day. In fact, in our newest physical activity guidelines, bouts of any duration during the day can be accrued to help us to reach our physical activity goals. There's no such thing as too old for exercise. We will highlight specifics in terms of how can you ensure you're being active safely. We're going to make sure that after this webinar, we don't view physical activity as boring or monotonous. We'll highlight that access to a gym, pool, or jogging trail, while it's wonderful, if it's not possible, that's okay. And it doesn't need to be an expensive behavior. We will speak to how you can be active without equipment, how you can utilize free resources instead of having a personal trainer. We're going to try to debunk all of these myths and misconceptions. So before we start asking you to get up and move, and we do hope that you'll join us in that movement, we first want to define for you what physical activity is. Physical activity is simply any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscles that requires energy expenditure. So there actually are activities out there that constitute physical activity that maybe we weren't thinking about. So activities can be aerobic in nature, they can be muscle strengthening, they can be multi-component. And Jack, I think we should highlight what our favorite aerobic activities are.
We will.
I have to say on this list, I think Zumba and cycling and absolutely taking the dog for a walk would be my favorite examples. What are yours?
Oh, I think for me, it's, walking, sometimes running, I get down on the floor and as I'm going to demonstrate later, just some other strengthening activities I like to do. And of course, when I was a little bit younger, I did a lot of lifting of kids, and that was definitely a muscle strengthening activity. But I do love to walk and, just trying to stay flexible. I've always loved sports. When the campus was open, I was swimming actually. So there's all kinds of fun things.
Absolutely. And actually, what's really nice is Jack's going to kindly give us some examples of all of these activities today. We'll do a quick aerobic activity. We'll do some muscle strengthening activities. We'll also speak to some of these multi-component activities as well that you can do from the comfort of your own home. The reason that we want to talk with you today about physical activity and how important it really is because there is an endless list of health benefits associated with regular physical activity. We do know that when it comes to being regularly active, this decreases your risk of a number of chronic conditions, including developing cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and a number of others. What's really exciting is what physical activity can also improve. Bouts of physical activity can improve individuals' perceptions of their quality of life. Following a single bout of moderate to vigorous intensity activity, we can see improved cognition on the day that bout of activity was performed. When it comes to some of these flexibility and stretching exercises, we find that they can help to prevent injury. In stressful times such as this, it's really important to note that regular activity can reduce symptoms of anxiety, stress, and depression. We also find that regularly active individuals feel better and sleep better. I don't know about all of you, but if you sleep better, that sounds like a great behavior to engage in. We also have a lot of evidence to highlight for us that individuals who meet as well as exceed the physical activity guidelines see slow or reduced weight gain, or they see weight maintenance, which we know is really important when it comes to health, as well as improved self-esteem and body image. So with that being said, there's so many health benefits, I think we should get moving. What do you think?
Right, I think so. Now, before we work out, and usually before I work out, and usually after I work out, I usually try to spend some time stretching. And, since we've been quarantined and I'm having to work from home more, I'm sitting a whole lot more than I really like to. When I was at the office, I had a standing desk. I could stand, I could sit, I could walk around the office, do different things. But now, now that I'm at home, I sit a little bit more, and maybe I shouldn't, and maybe we all shouldn't. So the first thing we want to talk about is just some simple stretching things that we can do that you can even do while you're sitting. So if you're sitting down right now, I want you to put your arms straight out in front of you like this, and I want you to intertwine your fingers and put them together like that, and then just kind of slightly, gently push out away from you. And we want to hold that for about 10 seconds. And if you're doing that, you'll feel a little bit of stretching in your forearms, maybe in your fingers, in your wrists, a little bit like that. Okay, so we've done that for about 10 seconds, and you can kind of shake that out. Then you want to put your arms straight up, okay, and then do the same thing. Intertwine your fingers, push straight up, and just kind of hold it there for about 10, 12, 15 seconds, something like that. And again, I'm just sitting down right here in front of you, and hold that, and then just drop it like that. Okay, another thing that you might want to do are some shoulder shrugs, and these are really good, especially after you've been sitting and kind of humped over the computer if you're working from home. So what I like to do is I'd like to sit up straight in my chair, and then I just like to roll my shoulders up, forward, and I just roll them up, forward, back and forth, like that, okay? And then I'll reverse it and go back the other way and just stretch it like that, okay? So those are real easy to do. Another thing sitting down is sometimes my neck gets a little stiff, and I don't want to have an injury to my neck by leaning over my computer too much. So I'll take my left hand, put it behind my back, take my right hand, and I grab my left wrist behind my back. And I'm just gonna pull down slightly. And then while I'm pulling down slightly, I'm gonna roll my neck or my head to my right, okay? So now I'm getting some stretching right in here in my shoulder and in my neck, pulling that, and I hold that for maybe 10 seconds or so. And then I gently release it. And then I'm gonna switch hands. I'm gonna take my left and grab my right, and I'm gonna pull down and stretch to my left, okay? So I'm feeling some good stretching in my neck, and that's in my shoulder, and that's good. And I'll go back and forth and do that, say about 3 times, holding it for about 10 seconds, something like that. Another thing too with my neck, and again, this is something I can do, I just sit up straight, and I wanna do just some really gentle neck rolls. So I'll start out with my head straight up, and I'll drop it right down to my chest, and I'm gonna feel the back of my neck down into my back, stretch a bit, and I'm gonna feel that, and then I'm just gonna slowly, gently roll it over to the left. And I'm not going all the way around, and then I'm back to the front again, and then to the right, and then back to the front again, to the left, then back again to the right. And you know what? Even just doing a few of those really feels good. And as Sarah mentioned, it really will help with sort of waking your body up, because even though you're just doing some slight moves, and that might be all you want to do, just like every 10, 12, 15 minutes that you're behind the computer, just something like that, just to kind of get the blood flowing, stretch that out a little bit, and that'll help prevent any other further injuries. So we get a little bit better range of motion, okay? It increases the performance of our neck, our shoulders. I feel better already. You know, that might just be enough to reduce some stress after you've maybe been on a hard phone call or looking at some emails or grading tests or who knows what you're doing. And then it improves my posture because I've made myself have to sit up straight. And as I said, it enhances safety and cuts down on injuries that might occur. So some other stretches that I've listed out here, and we won't go through all these really, but again, these are some things that you can do from a seated position. The seated lower back stretch is simply, you're just sitting in your chair, and you don't need anything in front of you. You're gonna have to push away from the desk a little bit, and all you're gonna do is you're gonna take your hands and you're gonna reach down in front of you and try to go as far down as you possibly can, maybe try to touch the floor, and I'm just gonna stretch my lower back, okay? Then again, I'm just gonna come up very slowly, gently, and down again, stretching, again, just going between my knees to the floor. The seated hip and gluteal stretch is just really, and I can demonstrate it maybe easier standing up, is while you're sitting at your desk, you're just gonna bring one foot over the other, just like if you're gonna like crossing our legs. But again, all I'm doing is putting there, and then I'm just leaning forward very gently, very easily, just to feel the stretching in my glutes and my hips, okay? And I'll go back and forth that way, okay? A seated hamstring stretch, all I'm doing is sitting. I'm gonna put my one leg out in front, okay? And keep the other one bent right next to me like normal. And then I'm just gonna lean forward. And again, what I'm trying to do is feel some stretching right back here in my hamstrings, okay? So just out forward and lean forward, okay? Lower back stretch, really all that is I'm just going to lean forward and again, stretching my lower back out, keeping my back straight, keep my head up, and I'll feel some nice stretch in there. Hamstring stretches, again, some different things you can do. Hamstring stretches are just simply touching your toes, that standing quad stretch, grabbing one ankle, pulling it up, and you feel the stretching in your quads there. Really, for any of these stretches, you can simply just go and Google the names of those stretches, and I guarantee you, you'll find something very quickly that can show you what you can do to stretch. And it's all good.
All stretching is good. That was very helpful. I feel better already.
Good.
So now that everyone has stretched and maybe we're ready for a little bit more activity, we do want to highlight for you in terms of what the recommendations truly are for physical activity. We do want, as we talk through some of these movements, to think about how we could piece these activities together for at least 30 minutes per day, at least 3, if not 5, if not each day of the week. What I think is really important to note is that some quick stretching, both before as well as after, is of utmost importance. And Jack made the stretching look so easy. So easy, but we know that you want to take that stretch to a point of mild discomfort, not pain, mild discomfort. Hold for about 15 to 30 seconds and then relax and repeat. These were stretches that you could do before activities, maybe before going to bed at night, a great way to start to relax. We also have some recommendations here about maybe showering after maybe stretching after you showered or had the opportunity to soak in a tub. Anytime we have that increase in muscle temperature, we're going to see improvements of those stretches. And lastly, before we move on, we do want to remind everyone of some important safety cues. We don't want to bounce a stretch. We want to make sure that we're not stretching a muscle that isn't warmed up or is feeling particularly stiff in any way. And we always want to focus on breathing normally.
Now, when we get through stretching, we want to move into maybe some kind of muscular strength. And you know what? Muscular strength, muscular endurance is very, very important. Now, there's a difference between the two. Muscular strength is maybe that one thing that you need to do maybe once in a while. I oftentimes tell my students, it's like when you move into the dorm, muscular strength is needed to pick that box up off the ground and put it in the in the cart, that's going to take it up to the dorm room or something like that. So you got to have some strength to do that. Muscular endurance is more of, needing your muscles to do multiplicity of things over and over. So again, back to my example, if you're a student moving in and you got to move a lot of stuff, well, you're going to need muscular endurance to pick up a lot of boxes and maybe other items that you're going to take up to your dorm room. So those you would need the muscular endurance for that. Now, how can I improve for that? Well, after I've done my warm-ups and actually, my muscles are now, after doing some stretching and so on, they're kind of warm. Now I can do some activities. So the first thing I want to show you is something simple that you can do at home. Again, these are just muscle squats. So just some basic squats. So I get my chair here, and all I'm going to do is stand in front of my chair, and I'm just going to pretend, or it seems like I'm just going to sit down in my chair. So I'm going to reach forward as I start to sit. And as soon as I feel the chair, then I'm going to come back up. So I'm down, whoop, and up, down, up, down, up. I'm keeping my legs about shoulder width apart. I'm breathing normally, okay? So I'm not holding my breath for anything, okay? The second thing you might want to do is I just call them some leg swings. Again, I get behind my chair, and this is real easy. I just kind of use this for some balance, okay? And so all I'm going to do is I'm lifting my legs up, going to the left, going to the right, just going back and forth. And you see there on the screen, you might do that 10 or 12 times. And again, you rest for about 30 seconds and then repeat, okay? Another thing you might do is just some push-ups. And push-ups are something we've been doing, probably all of us, for a long time. And remember, you can do them a little differently. They don't always have to be on your toes. So for me, I oftentimes just get down here on my knees, and I get my hands just about shoulder width apart. And then I'm just going to do some basic push-ups. And that's really good for my shoulders, my elbows, my forearms, my chest, all that. So those are a few things you can do. You can see the other ones listed there. And again, one great thing about Google is that you can get on there and you can look up muscular strength activities, and there's plenty of them there.
Absolutely. And I think a fun part of this webinar is that Jack has so kindly presented all of these exercises, and we can almost use them as a roadmap for physical activity participation. If you're looking for a way to be active and you only have 1 minute, you could do these first 4 exercises for 20 seconds each. If you have 4 minutes, you could do each of these exercises for a minute, and the list goes on in terms of how you could be active during your day and with your family. We again want to highlight some important safety cues. Again, breathing normally, in through your nose and out through your mouth. Breathing consistently throughout the activity is of utmost importance.
And be sure and don't overdo it. If you've got an injury of some kind, then just kind of take it easy. There's no need to aggravate an elbow injury or anything like that.
Absolutely. So if you joined Jack and you completed those exercises, we're guessing that you are experiencing an increase in your breathing and body temperature. You should feel your heart rate be elevated. We also know, based on the literature, we're going to see an increase in metabolism and cognition, range of motion following a lot of those movements. And that's really important, as Jack mentioned, for building strength and endurance, which is really important for health and physical capabilities. It's also going to be key when it comes to posture and balance and bone density.
Now we want to talk just real briefly about how to be active outdoors. And we know that during this time of the COVID-19 and kind of being quarantined, having to stay home, one of the things that we can do, and that is to get outside. And of course, this is the most beautiful time of the year here in Philadelphia, and we like to get out. We see the flowers blooming in the trees and so on. But let me just remind you that to maintain your distance and to stay away from big crowds. And those are going to be in the really popular parks that we might want to go to. But try to think about some of the smaller parks that are close to your house that you might be able to get into to do some walking or jogging, or maybe just playing some sports or doing some other physical activity. Remember that, it's our belief that nature really is like medicine, okay? It has some components in it that just make us feel better, okay? I know when I go out every day to walk, it just improves my frame of mind. It just makes me just generally feel better about all that's going on, and I look forward to it every day. So we walk, we may do some cycling, which is great. Just remember, that you want to be careful when you're cycling in kind of little crowded areas. Like sometimes if you go around the Schuylkill, Fairmount, those places could be a little crowded. Just hiking, one of the things that I love to do is hike in the Wissahickon, and that's been a great activity. And there's very few people that usually up on the hiking trails, especially during the week. And you know what? I love to garden. So I love to get out and be outside and work in my garden. And if you have a garden, and this is a good time to get out there and do some activity.
Absolutely. And I think it really highlights that definition of physical activity that we talked about earlier. So often we have these misconceptions that to be active, we have to go running, but that's really not going to be the case. And gardening is a form of physical activity. So we do have one final break, and this is going to be a really important one. This is where we want to see everyone up out of their chairs and joining in for our aerobic activity.
Right. So, some easy things that you can do. We've all done this from elementary school. It's just some jumping jacks. Again, aerobic activity is anything that's going to get your heart rate up and pumping faster, okay, than sitting, obviously. So the walks, the jogs, those are all good. But if you're stuck in the house, okay, so everybody can join me. We're just going to do some jumping jacks. And you can do quite a number of those and then take a rest and then do some more. Or you can do some jumping jacks and then maybe do some squats. So I might do some jumping jacks and then I may do several squats. Then I'll go back to the jumping jacks, or maybe I'm going to march in place. And again, depending on where you are, we want you to be safe. We don't want you to be careful and don't step on the cat or the dog or anything, but you can march in place. That's a good one. And then I maybe do some push-ups. Then step-ups are also good. A lot of us here in Philadelphia, we live in houses that have stairs. So I can go over to my staircase and I can just step up and down, step up, step down. Or I might just walk up and down the stairs several times. And again, I might put in between those going up and down the stairs, I might include something else, my push-ups, my squats, my leg swings, something like that. Okay, so those are just some ideas. Again, you can look up all kinds of things. If you have a jump rope, those are excellent. If you have a box or any kind of thing that you can step up on, those kinds of things are fun. Sometimes even just wrestling with the kids, that's an aerobic activity. So enjoy it.
Absolutely. And we really encourage everyone at home to go ahead and give aerobic activity a try, even if it's just for a minute, even if you try all of these activities out only for 10 seconds, or maybe you pick your favorite. You think, oh, step-ups do sound like fun. Go ahead and give those a go for at least a minute today. The reason that we focus on aerobic activity and we're encouraging you to get up and to be active is because there are a number of benefits that are realized following aerobic activity. We highlighted having more energy. We know in a time like this that is always going to be helpful. Similarly, we see reduced stress levels and feeling of depression. We spoke to a number of these really important health benefits and outcomes following physical activity. We do want to highlight for you that we are speaking to moderate or vigorous intensity activity. And when it comes to moderate intensity, I always like to think about the talk test. I think that's a great way to highlight moderate. When it comes to moderate activity, you should feel like you're working. Your heart rate's going to be elevated. Maybe your breathing is a bit heavier, but you should still be able to talk to your neighbor. That's really important. When it comes to vigorous intensity, it's also great. It's more challenging, but we want to make sure at minimum we're working at that moderate intensity. We want to remind everyone as we come to a close of the physical activity recommendations, our goal really is as adults to do at least 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity activity each week. When it comes to physical activity, more is better, and our current guidelines highlight for us that we actually should aim for a minimum of 150 to 300 minutes of moderate activity each week. We also want adults engaging in those muscle strengthening activities that Jack demonstrated for us, focusing on flexibility and multi-component. And when it comes to children and adolescents, ages 6 years of age and older, we also want to see you very active. When it comes to children and adolescents, their activity goal is actually at least 60 minutes of moderate intensity activity each day. So how are we going to fit in all of this activity into our already very busy schedules? What I encourage everyone to do is think about scheduling physical activity like an appointment. If you have a meeting at 2 and you schedule your physical activity for 3, maybe that's a great way to ensure that you are able to be active during your day. I also think that Jack and I can't stress enough how important breaking those bouts up can be. 30 continuous minutes absolutely can be a challenge, but 5, 10, 15-minute bouts throughout your day may be more feasible and will absolutely help you to reach these physical activity goals. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we want to remind everyone to be creative. There are ways that you can use odd objects throughout your home to be active, and we know that you'll be able to come back and reference this slide if that is something that you'd be interested in. I don't know about you, Jack, but I think it makes activity more exciting.
Yes, it's a challenge.
Absolutely. So with that, Jack has some really wonderful physical activity resources that we're going to share with you, and then we'll conclude our webinar.
just wanted you to know that there, as I said earlier, there are a lot of resources out there, especially at this time with everyone having to stay close to home. These are just some of my personal favorites. They refer to maybe something about walking, or maybe something about strengthening, activities that I want to do. If you're in Twitter, here I've listed some things there that you might want to look at. Twitter's been a great resource, and then of course Facebook sometimes has things on there. And again, yeah, just anything that you think you might be interested in, you just got to Google it, and you can find it. Sure enough, and get outside.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to Jack or myself, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. As we conclude, we did want to share with everyone about the Global Days of Service. Through this webinar, we're proud to participate in Temple's Global Days of Service and Temple Toast. It is going to be a week worth of volunteer opportunities and a one-day giving marathon, and they're going to have all of that information for you here. I think it's really important to highlight that this Temple Toast does support students impacted by COVID-19 through scholarships and student emergency aid. And thank you to generous donors. When it comes to these difficult times, we know that many friends and alumni are going to help students throughout this time. And if that's something that you're interested in, again, gifts can be made through the webpage that you see here.